Kings and queens, welcome back to another episode. How are we all doing today?
We're good. Second intro
There
is
you
going
go.
better than the first.
Technical difficulties, but it happens. It happens. Pleasure to be
Yeah.
here as always.
Absolutely.
All right.
Also, again, we have a special guest, international guest, the first international guest.
Level
My
up.
cousin Ibrahim. Yeah, exactly. He is on the show now. He reached out with a really cool topic. So yeah, he's on the show now. First international guest. It's an honor to have you on the show. Say hi, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. So, to preface this, I want to thank you guys for having me as a guest. First international guest, as Talal mentioned. Quite an honor to be
Absolutely.
here.
Absolutely. You so I mentioned this topic that we were about to discuss, but I felt like um it would be best if you introduce this since like this is kind of your topic. So what kind of give us a little introduction as to what we would be talking about.
Absolutely. So, especially since this episode is done on an international platform, you guys are in the States, I'm in Saudi Arabia. I thought it would be interesting to discuss the education system, kind of compare and contrast how it's going here and there,
Mhm.
and just sort of see the pros and cons, what things that are not going so well for it. We could discuss and see if it's the same problems here and there, and try to find out if we could possibly suggest some solutions to it. I think it would be an interesting discussion to kind of see how the education systems are going for both sides. And especially since you, Talal, had your time studying in Saudi Arabia, I had my time studying in the US, which we'll both discuss hopefully.
Mhm.
So we could kind of see how things are going on both sides and compare and contrast.
Absolutely.
For sure.
That's
Sounds
really,
good.
really interesting. Yeah. Because now we have like an international perspective on it.
Yeah.
Um,
A new international perspective.
there you go. There you go. Um, so yeah, you want to just like start us off real quick with basically what made you want to choose this topic or what inspired you to choose this topic?
Well, one of the main reasons I chose this topic is because it's been a point of discussion for years and years. As I was growing up as a student, when I was in school, we would always discuss the education system, most notably during my senior year of high school. And this was the only year where I studied in the States, actually. So we had a lot of discussions in class about the education system in the US itself. We were kind of discussing how it was going, how we could improve on it, and we all acknowledged that it had several flaws. A lot of students, have this stereotype that school is boring and not interesting enough. You know,
Yeah.
so I thought maybe we could kind of discuss and dig deeper into this and find out as to why it everyone feels like that, and what might be done to make school or college, the education system in general, more passion driven or more interesting for someone to be a part of.
Interesting. So, in your opinion, do you think, because you mentioned that the education system focuses more on, at least in Saudi Arabia, it focuses more on like grades and that kind of outcome. Do you think that A, it was always like that, and B, it's gonna change soon?
Well, from my experience as I was growing up and in the school that I was going to, it was always about the grades from grade 1 all the way to grade 11,
Mhm.
because grade 12 was in the States. But I think there was a time period decades ago where the exams were all the final exams were standardized. They were set forth by the Ministry of Education, but
Mhm.
currently it's the school itself that puts the exams and gives you the grades. And honestly, I feel like I throughout my entire education experience as I was growing up, it was always about the grades, even to this day. So that's why I really wanted to kind of discuss and bring up this topic to see if am I the only one who's having the same issue, or is it different for you guys? Or I want to hear your input about this and how you guys are experiencing it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to
No,
hit
I-
off on
it's-
that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's super interesting because so I feel like our perspective here as a trio is pretty interesting because Nate went to cyber school for a while.
Mhm.
Talal has been in public school. I was homeschooled my whole life, but I mean, now we're in college. So I feel like it's just an interesting, a new perspective. I feel like it's an interesting perspective on schooling in general because I mean, I think the big topic as far as the school system goes is homework because I've as you look at the United States, homework in the United States, I feel like it's the highest out of everywhere else. So
I can agree on that.
I like I don't know. It's just there's I feel like it's a two-sided double-edged sword, I guess that's the expression. Because I have a class currently, I have a Calc 2 class. I don't have homework in it. And it's really, really hard. Like I feel like the solution isn't to just do away with homework. Because if you do away with homework establishes that repetition in the practice that is necessary to really learn a subject. But when you do away with the homework, you don't get to practice it as much.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And well, see, here's the thing. Here's the thing about homework. There's homework where it's like actually beneficial to you, and then there's homework where you just do it just cause.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Forensics.
Exactly. So, and
So much unnecessary work.
so yeah, I was actually a TA for the forensics class that Nate was talking about. Like I took it and then I was a TA for it. The amount of work of like homework and assignments that was put into that class is like way too much. Like there has to be a limit. But there's homework, like for example, homework I'm doing right now. It's just like simple practice converting from like binary to decimal form in terms of like addresses and stuff. That okay, I get because you know you need practice to make sure you have the method down. But assignments where you have like 10 to 15 pages to do every week at least, that's I feel like that's not necessary. That's just for one class. Um, so I feel like for homework, you can't say like a yes or no definitive for everything. It
Yeah.
just it depends to like how necessary it is for you to practice.
Yeah,
But
it
yeah,
depends on the subject because
exactly.
some subjects
And
don't
then
require as much.
that also depends on person to person. Some person might need more practice in a subject than another.
Mhm.
So that's
Absolutely.
another aspect to it that's even, it's just there's so many variables that can go into it.
Here's a
Exactly.
question for you guys. Do you do the homework to get the grade or to actually learn from it?
Get the grade.
Yeah.
Let me put it to you this way. This past semester at college, I had 3 labs a week, which is a lot. And just with the type of work that I had to do, it was all very course intensive. And I don't think I really learned much at all from the homework. I was just doing it just so I could get it done and get on to the next thing that I had to get done. I don't think I learned anything. I think I just learned what I needed to know to do the work, get it done, rinse my hands, and go on to the next.
It
Mhm.
just feels like there's a constant added weight or burden over your shoulder. That's what homework's represented. And you're just trying to lift that weight off and get rid of it. So, and unfortunately, it kind of gives you a false sense of accomplishment where, yeah, you got the homework done, but did you actually learn what you were supposed to learn from
Yeah.
the homework or from the course's objectives?
I'm going to add another side to this too. And I completely agree on that. There's something I read, I can't remember where it was or what I was doing, but because of the vast amount of information out in the world today, it's very easy to learn, and people are receiving information so much more quickly than, say, 50 years ago. And I feel like
Definitely.
in turn, that has potentially, I have no proof or anything, but that has potentially led to this maybe increased amount of work to do, because people are thinking, okay, they receive information much more quickly. They should be able to handle it. I don't know if that's the case, and it could very well not be. But is it not very plausible? I don't know.
I think a lot of it depends person to person because some people need
Yeah.
the work more than others, and others don't need it as much. They're just more naturally gifted in a subject.
I think what this focuses on is more on quantity rather than quality. Yeah, we are able to handle more, but we're just doing more numbers of homework, but not actually extracting much of what we need. With this developing education, or as you said, most of the information is online, we need ways to extract what we need from that information. I mean, you could have a million books in front of you, which is what we have today in our phones, but that doesn't mean that you're gonna know everything that these books contain. So I feel like we should probably focus more on how to capitalize on extracting what we need in the most efficient way, rather than just constantly doing more work or adding the workload.
I agree
100%.
completely.
Yeah.
I think that it's something to be said that teachers teaching in class, I feel like that ought to be the highest level that you are learning, because you're essentially you're learning from somebody who's supposed to be an expert in the subject. So I feel
Mhm.
like the time that you spend in class shouldn't be done doing assignments. It should be done learning, because I don't know anybody that enjoys reading a textbook, because I just don't think it's ever appealing. It's like you're reading in another language, and you have to learn the language as you're reading.
Mhm.
So I feel like it's so much easier when you learn from the teacher who's an expert in the subject, and you're learning the little tips and tricks that they have, rather than spending class time working on assignments.
But here, to bounce off what um, you said no one enjoys reading a textbook, which okay, yeah, no, I get, I really do. But for you guys, I want you to think of one class that you enjoyed, any class at any grade. Just think of that class for a second. I can guess that you really enjoyed that class, not because of like the assignments he or she gave or stuff, but because the way you learned the
Yeah.
Yes.
material. Um, so what I'm trying to say is that you can have two teachers using the same textbook, assigning the same reading, sure, assigning the same homeworks, but it's just the way they deliver it, which is just crucial.
It comes
So
down to knowing your audience.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
And
you can have a teacher who's just blabbing out
right.
whatever lecture they need just cuz, and they're doing their job, right? That's in their job description. But you have another teacher, right, that you almost feel like they're talking to you one on one. You know what I mean? Like this is just personalized for you.
Absolutely.
But that they're doing that while talking to the class, and like that's a talent. And you are definitely not finding that in everybody. But what I'm trying to say is that it really comes down to the teacher more than just like the types of homework that we're getting. Sure, the homework is hard, but I feel like you're more inclined to learn more when the teacher pushes you to in a good way.
Yes.
Yeah, and this takes me to another point I wanted to bring up, which is the purpose. I believe that the purpose of teaching or a teacher being in class is not to recite what the textbook has, but rather to actually make the student want to go and explore more about the topic themselves. Because from my experience, the most I have been able to learn is when I'm actually and genuinely interested in the topic. Because as you said, the
Totally.
information is out there. And if you go out there and look for it yourself with passion or with desire to actually learn about it, you're going to gather a lot of information, more than what you would initially think. So
Absolutely.
that's why I've always felt in school that I was kind of suppressed in an environment that didn't allow me to be who I wanted to be, or explore what I wanted to explore, or discuss what I wanted to discuss. So that's one of the things I wanted to bring up is, how did you guys feel during your time at school? Did you feel that you were like locked in this place from, I don't know, 8 to 3? Or because for me, a lot of the time I felt like that. I did not have the autonomy that I wish I had while I was a student. So I wanted to hear your guys' input on this.
It really, it really depended. So like, if you're asking about like high school, because college is different, you don't have like an 8 to 3 thing. But in terms of high school, it like I said, it really depended on the teacher and on the class. Sometimes I did feel like I was just sitting there just because. And at times, unfortunately, it wasn't like all the time. Um, I sat down in a class where I was like, all right, I am genuinely ready to sit down and like listen and learn to what you have to say. One class that I can like pinpoint that really made a difference. It was called film literature, right? You can make this class either like the best class you take in, or it can be the most boring thing ever. So what that is just basically studying film and like how things are produced and like the different angles and shots and stuff like that. There's a lot of technicalities with it, right? Um, and we had to memorize all of that. Was it kind of hard? Sure, whatever. But the teacher did it in a way that at one point I didn't like, it just felt like I was just going through like a really nice process where it's like he just, because he is really, really passionate about what he does. And I feel like that's the reason that class is so memorable. Like you can hear and feel the passion while he's talking. So all the students, they're kind of like subconsciously there, like, okay, I really do want to listen to what this guy has to say. And this applies to anything. Like if you're talking to anything to anyone and you talk with passion, they're going to be more inclined to listen instead of you kind of just
Absolutely.
sitting there monotonously saying what you need to say. So to answer your question, and Boyle and Nate are going to bounce off of this, is that sometimes high school felt like a little like just like a monotonous process, I guess. But there were some classes that really popped out and I enjoyed learning in them.
For sure. And I think another thing is that classes that, especially when you get to high school, and I mean, I'm really experiencing it in college, you're just required to take some classes. I'm
Mhm.
I'm not an
Yes.
artistic person. It's just I'm not. I've never been good at it. So I went as far away from art as I could, and I'm doing engineering because I don't want to touch paper and pencil and draw something. But I still had to take art classes in high school, and I have to take an art class in college. And it's just the requirement is always going to be there to do something that you don't like,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that's just the way that it goes. I feel like it's one thing to have to take those classes. It's another thing that once you find the thing that you like, I feel like we should be building on that thing earlier rather than once you get to college when you're paying an exponential amount of money
Mhm.
to learn about the thing that you want to learn about. But I'm currently in college. I'm taking classes that I don't want to take because they're a requirement. I thought I just got done with that in high school. Like
Mhm.
it boggles my mind that I have to go through all these hoops.
Eh,
So my little
Go ahead.
take
Go
real
ahead.
quick. And I'm gonna turn this towards internships a little bit. Because I actually have found Reddit articles about this. And the same ties in with college specifically. All these little extra classes that you don't want to take, they're part of being well-rounded, right? But they're also an over preparation. When you go into the workforce, they're going to teach you exactly everything you need to know in a training period. So no matter what you learn, they're going to teach you their own way, regardless. It's just to give you a well-rounded understanding of the topic. You don't really get that freedom that people think you will going into college. And so in terms of internships specifically, and it kind of ties into this education part of it, is it's kind of a vicious cycle. In order to get an internship, most of them, you need prior internships, right?
Yeah,
And so,
I've seen
very
so many
interesting
memes about
article.
this.
So it's just like the meme where the person applies for a job and they tell them you need experience, and when he
Yes.
tries to get experience, they say you need a job.
Exactly. But
Exactly.
with internships, it's a little bit deeper than that,
It's a
because
catch-22.
companies actually often prefer unpaid internships because it shows you're willing to go and learn without compensation. It shows greater initiative. So they actually prefer non-paid internships. But if you're someone like me who kind of needs the money, and so you're trying to get paid internships, most of the time for a paid internship, you need a prior paid internship or
Mhm.
some prior internship. So you need to get something first. And it's just a vicious cycle back and forth between everything. And it's just a mess. And again, it's just over preparation.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
I completely agree with that. It makes me think of the meme where it says like some technical jobs you need like 8 years of experience in a certain coding program, and I saw somebody say this coding program has literally only been out for 3 years and I need 8 years of experience with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
There you go. And
So
a
go ahead.
question I was about to ask you, Ibrahim, actually, is we've been talking about how kind of you're prepared to what you want to do in college and how you want to like decide what you want to do. So in the US, we always have like counselors and stuff. But like even then, a lot of people go into college and a lot of people switch majors. Like it's a very common thing to switch your major. I did it, so
I have.
see, there you
I'm
go.
in the process
So
of.
boom, see, all three of us. So in terms of like in KSA in Saudi Arabia, how well prepared do you think um either the staff in high school or whoever in high school or just high school in general, how do you think they prepare you to what you want to do in college? Like, do they give you a good idea? Like, what's your take on it?
So I actually think this is a universal problem, not just in the States, not just in Saudi Arabia, but in a lot of places. I was actually going to bounce off to this topic. So glad that you took me there. It's about choosing, how do you know what do you want to be, or how do you prepare yourself to choose what you want to be? And it's not an easy decision. It takes its time.
Mhm.
But what the schools could do is to provide the environment that the student needs to actually be able to choose. And this goes back to having the school project based rather than grade based. So I actually went to Philadelphia. It was a school called SLA for my senior year, and that school was project based. And I have seen a drastic difference in how things were taught and how things were applied. So rather than actually being more oriented towards grades, like I want to get the highest grade in this class, I want to pass this class. And I think this does not really reflect what that certain topic or certain specialty actually is in the real world. So the basis of project-based schools is to actually give you a feel of what you learned, how do you give back to the community with what you learned? How do you apply what you learned to the real world? And if you get a sense of that right early on from high school, this will provide an environment where you can have an early simulation of what that specialty actually is in the real world. And this would make students more, this would expose them more towards the actual reality of how things are. And this would make the choice easier for them. So for me, I would think a good solution would be to actually allow the students to feel the environment for themselves, so that way they can decide earlier on where they want to go.
For sure.
So
Having like applications-based learning.
Exactly.
Pretty much.
And that's interesting point. Before we head on to the next point, we just want to do a quick ad break, thank our sponsors real quick, and we'll get right back to it. And we are back. So we were just talking about the last topic or the last point that Ibrahim was talking about was basically how the difference between like project based and like exam based or like homework based classes are. And I agree fully. I feel like in a project based class, it's much more hands on, and with hands on, you learn a lot more. Sure, the material can still be pretty challenging, but once you're in there working with it, so it's like an introductory to an internship, if that makes any sense.
so
You're taking like a quick snippet of what you're gonna do in real life. So like maybe like a coding project or an architecture project where you're like building a model or like yeah, anything like that, like applying to your major. And I feel like that's pretty beneficial.
something else I want to kind of throw out there. Um, so like Mike mentioned at the start of this, or at some point in this, like I cyber schooled, and so one of the parts about that was there's a lot more freedom in terms of your learning. Now, obviously, you need a lot more self-discipline. Same with homeschool to make sure you don't fall into the comforts of home and make sure you actually get your work done. But one of the things with cyber school, especially because there's still administration there, throughout the year there's plenty of opportunities for field trips, a ton of different clubs you can join, and on these like field trips and things like that, you get to do certain activities and things like that, and you kind of get to kind of explore your options a little bit more. And with cyber, they usually tend to offer a larger catalog of courses, and so you can kind of expand into a little bit of what you want to do. Like, so for mine, we had a keyboarding class, so like a MIDI keyboard to make electronic music and things like that. We also had a history of rock and roll class, so like if you wanted to get towards music, there was that. Right as I was leaving in my senior year, they offered computer courses and coding, um, all kinds of different things like that. And so as much as people, at least especially in this state, really despise cyber schools, and like state has really tried to shut them down because they take away from the public schools. That's the big argument. I really tend to argue that it's so much better because you get away from all the drama from day to day, which allows you to actually focus on your academics and learn more, and you have a greater choice. So like, especially for languages, we had the option between Spanish, French, German, Mandarin, Latin. I think maybe there were even a couple others, which for most high schools, you get what, Spanish, French, maybe German.
And German. There's always just
Usually
a
it's
German teacher.
those three.
Yeah, it's those three usually.
So sorry, you can finish your point. I have a quick take.
Yeah, so like I feel like, it just really depends on, not even just like we kind of said earlier, it really depends on the way you learn. And that even goes to a full-on administrative level of how the school is structured.
For sure. And one way that so when I was homeschooled, one way that my mother taught me is that she especially like taught me art class. When I was like very young, I was usually learning on my own. I had like a book that I would read and I would answer questions based off the book. But when I was that young, I took an art class with my mom, and she taught me about a certain artist, and then it was applications time. And every artist that we learned, I did a project based off of it, and I tried to mimic their art style. And I was like, I don't know, 10 years old doing Picassos. And I look back on that now, and I think that was like, that's the untold best way to learn, because you don't learn about art by reading and by listening to somebody talk about it. You learn about art by experimenting, about drawing, painting, whatever you like to do. So I think it's just every every subject, if you're not applying the information that you're using, I feel like you're almost wasting your time.
with
And you're
that
not.
history with that history in rock and roll class, actually, and this is where I first got a taste of podcasting. So just like how you would like go through an artist and then you would apply like their techniques and things like that,
Yeah.
every week we had a choice of like 3 to 4 music artists and a specific song by them. We had to go listen to the song, pull up lyrics, analyze the meaning of them, and then we had to do like a 30-minute podcast and talk about the artist, who they were, their style of music, what the song's meanings were, any like secret in between the lines, things like that. And so, like much like you were just talking about, it's a really interesting way to learn, and I think it's so much more beneficial. You get so much more out of it.
I wish that I had that class like a long time ago, because I would have started understanding lyrics like a long time ago, rather than just like
I mean,
understanding them on the
we went
fly.
from everything from like Elvis and Leonard Skinner to like Tutti Frutti, Otis Redding, or Little
Wow,
Richard, not Tutti Frutti. That's his song. Just like all over the spectrum. It was pretty
that's
cool.
crazy.
Right. And especially for things like art and podcasts, those things are driven by your personal interest first
Right.
and foremost. So as Mike was mentioning, uh, especially for art, the main thing you need is to be yourself while doing art. So, I mean, in school, the main thing that I really want is for people to discover themselves and to find out what their hidden potentials are. When you have a grading based system, it's all about competition and who's going to score first and who's going to score highest. But here's the thing about that, and this is something I've personally experienced. I noticed something with what I like to call as an educational fallacy. It's just a term I just made up, but let me explain what it means. So throughout high school, and at least here, a lot of the students get grades like 99%, 99%, 99% in a lot of subjects,
Mhm.
solely based or mostly based, giving them the benefit of the doubt, on memorization. But and even the standardized exams like the SAT or whatnot, students have gotten to the point where they would just memorize previous exams and score insane grades. I'm talking 99% on them.
I wish I could have done that.
And what happens with that is once they get to college, for example, in my university, I study medicine. When we got to first year, we had the university had this system where they had like this distinct student system where they would have the top 20 or 30 students, and this was based on their high school grades, their grades on the standardized exams, which they got high on mostly because of memorization. So what happened was they thought they were on top of everything. They had the highest grades obtainable. So one would assume that they learned what they need, or they learned everything there is to learn, at least from what the curriculum was giving to them. But when they got to first year in medical school, half of them failed, or at least got D's or barely passed. And this just shows you how when things are based on memorization, they're not gonna drive you too far before you fall down hard. And this actually has a harsh psychological impact, the way I see it. Imagine you've been getting constant A pluses or A's throughout your entire 12 years of school. Then you get hit with D's in the first year of university. How impactful psychologically do you think that would be?
It feels
Very.
like crap, dude.
Because
Exactly.
that's
Yeah.
Nate right now. That's Nate right
And
now.
it's not even because I memorize things. It's just, unfortunately for me, I had a lot of things happen in my personal life. And another thing was I never had to study. Never had to study. I had no reason to. I just quickly learned things. And so I went to college and I failed my first classes ever. And yeah, I
Yeah,
felt like
I
really dumb.
yeah, I could. So real quick on the SAT, when I took the SAT and the ACT combined like 6 times for like both of them
I took
combined.
the SAT about 3-4 times. Yeah.
And the thing that my mom always told me is the SAT isn't judging you based off of how smart you are. It's judging you based on your ability to take that particular test.
Thank
Because
you.
it's
Yes.
it's really not, it's not a test of your knowledge. It's how well you're able to work through the problems in the correct order that your brain works. And that's something I only figured out that on the last time that I took it, because
I wish I would have known
one
that.
of
That's a
the
really good.
for
Yeah,
for one
no,
of
that
the
was a good
reading
way you put that.
for one of the reading comprehension sections, there's always 4 different types of reading. And
Yeah.
it's just like the different things that the stories are based off of. And you need to figure out which ones you enjoy the most and do those ones last. Because then you can zip through the ones that you really like at the end when you have 15 minutes left in your time. It's just I really don't like standardized testing. And I'm glad that it's almost being done away with at this point.
It's
starting
very
to matter
flawed.
less because of COVID. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just
To add on to that point about standardized exams, we could actually have like a separate episode just based on that.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
just briefly,
Yeah.
a lot of people think that when students or people talk about the education system, it's mainly, it sort of has this like negative connotation to it where we're just complaining for the sake of complaining. But I genuinely want to discuss this because I really want to see things change in the long run in terms of how things are being taught, especially in high school. Because if you want to change something as big as education, it's not going to happen in a day and night. And it needs to happen from the core foundations of it, which is all the way
Definitely.
down to elementary, middle, and high school. This is where
Mhm.
things need to start changing.
Mhm.
So,
yeah.
from my experience, being in that project-based school, which was one of the best experiences I've had, although it was challenging, very, very challenging, actually. But despite that, I actually enjoyed it. And what I would see every week is principals or teachers from the neighboring schools who had like grade-based systems would actually visit our school to observe, just to see how things are running on the project-based school, because that school was one of the top rated in the city.
Mhm.
So it was, I think we're in the middle of a transition phase right now. And especially with COVID, where things are now online, and we could sort of talk about how things have changed when learning became virtual. I think it proved the point that physically attending school or college might not be efficient as self-learning. What do you
And
guys think about that?
real quick about the transition to online learning. When I did cyber school, I can't tell you how many people would say, "Oh, you have it so easy. Oh, that must be so nice. It must be so easy." And then all these
I
same
could
people
scream.
are messaging me, "Hey, I can't get my work done. Can you like make me a schedule? How do you do this? This application won't work. Oh, it's real easy, huh?
Listen, I could scream right
Yeah,
now.
real
I was
easy. Go ahead,
homeschooled
do it."
for years. I was homeschooled for over a decade, and I did all that stuff myself.
I was
And
done
everybody
7
was like,
years. I was
"Oh,
online,
you have it so easy. This looks so
right?
easy. You just get to get done with all your work on your own." It's like, yeah, I'm good at it. I'm self-sufficient at this point. Good luck being online yourself.
See,
I
the
feel like
thing
we
is
could
about
definitely do a
that.
second episode on this.
Oh, I could.
Listen,
feel like
The
we
thing
homeschool and
definitely
about
could do
cyber
that.
online
people
learning,
could get so heated with how many times we get told, "Oh, it must have been so easy." And now I love the fact that people have to do it and they
Yes.
hate it. and it's so hard for them?
I think it's because there's a lag in the education system. So, for example, we've transitioned to online learning right now, but it's the same grade-based concepts that we're learning. It's the same grade-based environment. If I'm too bored or too demotivated to do it in school, do you really expect me to do it in my bedroom? I'm just gonna go back to sleep.
Yeah.
And then
Exactly.
here's another thing is, are the parents going to make sure that the kids are actually doing the work?
No.
If they're not going to be self-motivated enough, and I know especially around here, but heck no. And kids they're just not going to do the work.
I really think it's just becoming a survival instinct at this point, given the suppressed environment that we're in. We're just trying to get by. I think it's just a survival instinct to just get through school or get through college, and then once you're thrown out there in the real world, you're like, what have I learned? What have I gained? You've just survived school and college, but now what? So I really think if you prepare the environment, if you modify the learning environment to where it's something that students actually desire to be a part of, where students really are motivated and passionate about discovering things, learning things in a interesting way. I mean, come on, the education is evolving so much right now. Technology is evolving so much. What needs to evolve as well is how things are taught to go with the improvements that are happening right now, both technologically, scientifically. If things are expanding so much and changing so rapidly, we need to catch up to that by delivering new learning methods that are much more easier and more fun to comprehend. We need to drive the passion. That's the main point of what I'm trying to say right now, is to have students become passionate about what they do. This will boost their potential tons and tons of times as it is right now.
100%.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Really, really good points. We don't want to take too long for the audience. We don't want to make the episode too long as well. Ibrahim, was an honor. I feel
Thank
like
you
we could
so
have a
much for
part
coming
2
on.
coming up, because these points are really interesting, and I feel like we could cover even more ground
Absolutely.
on more topics. So
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for taking the time for coming on and being a part of this podcast.
Yeah.
You were always expanding. We went international. There we go.
Gang.
So there we
It's been a
go.
pleasure, guys. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this episode. It was a fun
Absolutely.
discussion, hearing your guys' input on this.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Thanks for
So,
sharing it.
yeah.
Thanks
just
for
to wrap-
coming with the idea. Yeah.
Exactly. No,
Thank
this
you.
is a really, really nice subject that you came up with.
If you want your
Um,
idea heard, send a
see?
message.
There you go.
And maybe
Idea.
if we like you, you can get on the podcast too.
If we
I
don't, we'll
can
leave you
vouch
on
for that
red.
myself.
No.
But yeah, you guys take care. Ibrahim, thank you again.
Don't forget
We'll
to
see you
like,
guys on
subscribe,
the
turn on
next episode.
notifications, all that jazz.
100%.
I just
All
totally
that good
talked over
stuff.
you.
No, you're good. You're good.
We're
Yeah,
ending it before this gets worse.
Yeah.
So yeah, wrap it up. Like, subscribe, share, tell your friends, give us ideas, feedback, anything you want. All of our Instagrams are down below in the description if
Mike.
you're watching this on YouTube.
Real quick, before we end, what do they got to comment?
Ooh.
I
Oh,
think
yeah.
too.
Exactly.
Comment your favorite Jolly Rancher flavor.
There you go. Mike's comment.
There you go.
Put that down below.
Comment it.
See what we come up with. And
Hashtag Mike's comment.
there you go. See, that
There
could
you
be a thing
go.
now.
Hey.
There you go. So yeah, you guys take care and peace.
See ya.
Peace.
See ya.